I still remember the first English word that came out of my mouth, not because it was beautiful or profound, but because it was completely wrong. It was my first day of English class in school. Our teacher, Mr. Adams, walked in with his usual enthusiasm, like a man who had discovered the secret to happiness and was about to share it with the world. He wrote one simple word on the board: hello. Then he turned to us and said, "When you meet someone, this is what you say. Now let's practice." One by one, my classmates stood up and confidently said, "Hello." It was my turn. My heart pounded. I took a deep breath, stood up, and proudly said, "Hello." The class burst into laughter. Mr. Adams smiled and said, "Almost there." "Try again." I tried again. "Hello?"
Bonk.
He laughed. "You're getting closer, but remember, in English, the E sound is soft, not deep. Say it with me. Hello." That moment taught me two things. First, English is not just about words, it's about sounds, pronouns. Second, making mistakes is not just okay, it's necessary. If I had never said hello, I would have never learned how to say hello correctly. After my first success with hello, I expected my English skills to improve overnight. Spoiler alert, they didn't. In fact, the more I tried, the more I realized how hard it was. I wanted to sound like a native speaker, but my accent was thick, my grammar was a disaster, and every sentence felt like I was solving a math equation in my head. At that moment, a voice in my head whispered, "Maybe English just isn't for you." And for a while I believed it. But then something happened that changed everything. One afternoon, I was sitting in a park, feeling sorry for myself, when I noticed a little boy, probably 2 or 3 years old, playing with his mother. The boy pointed at a butterfly and said, "Look, a flutterby." His mother laughed. "Almost, sweetie. It's butterfly." The boy frowned for a second, then shrugged and repeated, "Flutterby." He didn't care that he was wrong. He didn't feel embarrassed. He just kept talking, knowing that eventually he'd get it right. And that's when it hit me. This is how native speakers learn. They don't study grammar books for years before speaking. They don't wait until their pronunciation is perfect. They just speak, making mistakes, laughing about them, and improving naturally. That's when I decided I would stop trying to be perfect. Instead, I would just keep speaking, no matter how many mistakes I made. After my mindset changed, my progress in English skyrocketed. But I noticed something strange. Some of my classmates, who had been learning English for years, still spoke with hesitation. Their sentences were robotic. Their pronunciation was stiff. Because they were thinking in their native language first, then translating into English. That's why their sentences sounded unnatural. A real native speaker would say, "Let's grab a bite." But they would say, "Shall we go to eat something?" Same meaning, but one sounds natural, and the other sounds like a textbook. That's when I made a rule for myself. I would stop translating in my head. I would start thinking in English. At first it was hard, but I found a trick. Whenever I saw something, I would describe it in English in my head. For example, if I saw a dog, I wouldn't think, "Oh, that's a perro," Spanish for dog. I would think, "That's a big brown dog. Looks friendly." At first, my brain resisted, but the more I did it, the more natural it became. And that, my friend, was when my English really started to sound native. Speaking English felt easier now. No more hesitation, no more fear of mistakes. But something still bothered me: my accent. One day, I decided to change that. Not by hiring a speech coach, not by memorizing complex phonetic symbols, but by using a simple trick. Not just hearing English, but really listening. Paying attention to how native speakers spoke, the way they stretched certain words, the way their voices went up and down, the little pauses they made. I stopped focusing on individual words and started focusing on rhythm and melody. English wasn't just a language, it was a song. To train my ear, I picked a short scene from a movie, just a few lines of dialogue, played it once, then again, closed my eyes and repeated it, trying to match every sound exactly. At first, it felt silly. But after a few days, something strange happened. Words started rolling off my tongue more naturally. My sentences flowed better. The moment I realized my accent had improved was at a cafe. I ordered coffee, and for the first time, the cashier didn't ask me to repeat myself. She just nodded, smiled, and said, "Got it." That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just speaking English. I was sounding English. Watching movies didn't help me until I made one small change. First, I turned on English subtitles and watched normally. Then, I watched again. But this time, I paused after every sentence, repeating the lines out loud, copying exactly how the actors spoke. At first, it was exhausting, but after a few weeks, I noticed something incredible. Words I used to struggle with now felt natural. Phrases that once confused me now made sense. My mouth adapted to the rhythm of native speakers. The best part? I could now watch a movie without subtitles and actually understand it. That was when I realized passively watching doesn't help. Actively listening and repeating does. One morning, I walked into a coffee shop feeling confident. My accent was improving, my sentences were flowing, and I was ready to practice. Stepped up to the counter. Took a deep breath. "Can I have a tall latte with whipped cream on top?" The barista gave me a strange look. You mean whipped cream?" She laughed. "You don't need to say on top. Whipped cream always goes on top." That moment taught me something valuable. Native speakers don't just use the right words. They also know what words are unnecessary. I started paying attention to small things like that. Instead of saying, "Can you repeat again?" I learned to say, "Can you repeat?" Because repeat already means again. Instead of saying, "I woke up at 7 a.m. in the morning," I just said, "I woke up at 7 a.m." Because a.m. already means morning. That small lesson made my English not just correct, but natural. After years of learning, something became clear. Sounding like a native isn't about having a perfect American or British accent. It's not about memorizing complicated grammar rules. It's about confidence. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. They mix up words, forget grammar, even create new phrases that technically aren't correct. But they speak with confidence. But once I started speaking like I didn't care, like I already knew the language, that's when I truly started sounding native. Not because my English was perfect, but because I spoke like someone who belonged in the language. I could give one piece of advice to anyone trying to sound native. It would be this: stop trying, Start living the language. Instead of just studying English, surround yourself with it. Think in English. Talk to yourself in English. Watch English content. Mimic native speakers. And most importantly, speak without fear. Mistakes won't stop you. They'll teach you. That's the real secret to mastering English naturally. Speak, listen, laugh, learn. And one day, you'll wake up and realize you don't just speak English, you live it.